Hey everyone, what's up? It's Kirsten Vanderjack over at Templeview Capital and Katie's House Foundation. I have Julie. She is back this week after traveling. Julie, how are you?
Very good. As my background shows, but I'm not at the beach right now. But yeah, traveling went well. And I'm excited to talk about grants today, right? And some of the other things that we've been touching on before.
Yeah, something that comes up in the foundation and, the tea this week is about medical housing. So I know there are several nurses who want to offer shared housing. And I thought that it would be kind of cool to touch on grants that this one here is about the veterans, so VA hospitals, but I thought it would be really cool to touch on some of the grants that are available specific to people coming out of the hospital. And in this case,
and it's timely because it's Nurses Week.
Oh, cool.
So yeah,
well, thank you to all the nurses.
Yes,
absolutely.
Yeah,
and
so
doctors
basically,
too, right?
where did you get this information? Where are you getting these grant informations, and where, I know we offer the class, so I'm sure they can, dive into that and get that. But where I see that this is just on a notepad here, how did you hear about this one?
So you guys can Google grants. So if you know that you want to deal with people who are coming out of the hospital and they have nowhere to go. Julie, you and I have talked about this, that in your neck of the woods, I think you said that they put them in a cab and somebody has to take them somewhere, right? And I know, but when people they get hurt or they go into the hospital for one reason or another, right? And then basically they have to leave. But if they have nowhere to go, what happens to those people?
Or they lost their housing while in the hospital, because as you and I both know, going into the hospital might be for a certain amount of weeks, but then you might have to have aftercare after that at a rehab facility or something like that. And in between that, you might lose your housing. So yeah, where do they go? What choices do they have? And what social workers are going to help them find a place to go?
Yeah. So to answer your initial question, everyone can always Google for a grant. So you can literally put in hospital to housing veterans and you'll see this grant come up, or anything, hospital to housing. But that's what I would suggest doing. That is what I did. And then it'll come up with a whole list of grants that are available from the government or other nonprofits. And then you just have to simply take some time to open up the PDF documents. And so we're going to look at this one here. That's actually, it was published back in 2022. And the VA runs this every couple of years. And so once you apply and they approve you to be one of their housing providers, then you would have to reapply every couple of years. And so right now would be a good time if you are somebody who works at a hospital and you want to make friends with the social worker at your hospital. And you want to say, listen, I'm a real estate investor. I care about people very clearly. I work in the health industry. Or if you are not working in the health industry, you can still, of course, take this approach and contact the social workers who work at the local hospitals where your houses are located or where you want to have houses that are boutique shelters. And essentially, you just need to start a conversation. This is a human business, and say, I'm looking to have a 4-bedroom house, or I have however many bedrooms that you have, but we always recommend at least 4 bedrooms. You put 2 beds in each room. In a hospital, right, there's normally 2 or 3 beds in a room. People are used to this. Now, don't get this confused with assisted living, because this is not assisted living. It's not even sober living. This is literally just because the people maybe lost their housing, like Julie said. Maybe they're elderly or something. That they could even be young, right? They could be a human trafficking victim, whether it's work related, and they came to the United States thinking that they were going to work, and they ended up being put into like an egg farm where the housing conditions might be terrible at that particular farm. Could be human sex trafficking. But anyway, they end up at the hospital. They need to leave. They don't have anywhere to go. So you have to start a conversation with the social worker right now to become friends with them and tell them that you care about the people. Now, where does the money come from? The money is going to come from whatever that social worker has. So they're either going to have their own grants, and they will tell you, listen, the funding that we get, it's maybe from United Way or from a nonprofit. It could be very specific to battered women, or it could be very specific to veterans. And so in this case, we're talking about VA hospitals, and the money that comes from there. And so let's go down
But
this.
it also could come from your local hospital, just that it is a veteran. So you would have to kind of have those conversations with that social worker about the placement and about what they would have to do or be or fall within the category to be able to get that specific money that you're eligible to get.
Yeah, always ask for a copy of it. Don't go off of people's talking, because perception, things get lost, and you just want to be able to read it and then check your boxes. If maybe there's a grant liaison that they work with, because a lot of times that is the case, it'll be the social worker handles the people and the paperwork. And then there's a grant person that works in the accounting department who's their counterpart who actually funds the houses. And so there's normally whoever owns the real estate, whoever funds the individual housing, and then of course the social worker who has the person who needs the housing. So let's go through what this says. This is a notice of funding opportunity, and it was basically for grants for a period of 3 years, starting in fiscal year October 1, 2023, but fiscal year 24, and it ends in 2026. So the way that you read this, just so you guys know when you're looking at a grant, is you have to read the whole thing because you're going to find out that, there's a bunch of rules and you need to figure out which ones apply to you and which ones don't. And in this case, if we go through here, we're going to learn that they will fund different levels of care. And so that terminology is very specific to, is it going to be, end of life care, or is it going to be very low level care? And you need to pick inside of your house that you're now offering to put at-risk individuals in. These individuals don't have a job probably, or they have to get a job because maybe they got hurt and they were in a coma for 3 months and they have no family maybe to go back to. That's why you're getting this funding, but you have to decide in your house, are you going to staff somebody to manage what's happening inside or not?
And that's something important that you would share with the social worker that you're making, these conversations with about what level of care that you offer.
Yes. And so I just wanted to get down here to the different types of homes and show you guys that, you have to pick a model essentially, and you need to charge a per diem per day based on the model. So you need to have the end in mind of how much it's going to cost to staff or not staff. And then of course your 12-month utilities, make sure that you're looking at a whole 12 months, because of course in winter and summer, it could be much more expensive, and you need to get that per diem that you're going to bill and write in your grant. A memorandum of understanding. We haven't gone over that either yet, but a memorandum of understanding is basically, you can actually Google that. You can get it on, any one of those kind of boilerplate legal, like Rocket Lawyer, I think has it.
Regular, yeah. Zoom,
yeah,
whatever.
Yeah.
Legal Zoom.
eForms, yeah, Legal Zoom. Well, I think Legal Zoom would charge you for it, but essentially, what you're going to do in this case, when you read this, is that they are asking you for a memorandum of understanding, which is, again, a free document you can get online. And it says that you are going to do A, B, C, and D. And the hospital, in this case, is going to do their counterpart, right? A, B, C, and D. And so then everyone has an understanding of how this is going to work, what people they will refer to you, and how much they will pay per day. And so I'm just trying to find that page here that gets into all the different levels of housing. My apologies. Now, Julie, while I'm looking at this, why don't you talk about, from a police perspective, how you see people regularly? I mean, isn't it common for people to be habitually homeless and the police are always encountering them?
I would say that it's not, I mean, obviously there's certain homeless people that have, like a regular relationship, I think, with law enforcement. But I know from my current experience that it's amazing how many people actually kind of live at the emergency room that need a higher level of care than no care. Because I think a lot of investors that might be on here today are thinking, oh, I'd take a veteran in, somebody that, gave service back. I want to appreciate the fact that they did all that, but they might have an injury, they might have something. And, I think it's great that if they don't need any care, that a lot of investors, like personal investors like you and I got a 4 flat, I got a 6 flat or whatever. And I got a couple of places that I can put a couple of veterans in one of the units, put 3 of the veterans in a unit. I can get some money from, these grants. Well, that agreement is going to be very little or no care. Well, a lot of the people that have either a relationship with the police a lot, because obviously things happen, but they also are always at the emergency room because there's not a lot of places that they can go to get the medical assistance that they need at the time. Maybe it's that they need, certain things done, once a week, and the only place that they know to go is the emergency room, and they go in there and they sit there all day long, because in some of the bigger major cities, the wait time can be 8 hours for an emergency room. I know in smaller cities and things like that, it's probably not more than an hour. But in some of the major metropolitan areas that, you and I have had experiences with, that there's a lot more homeless there, right? And you see them, you drive down, you see them. I know in California, you see them under the underpass, you see them all over places. Those people have a little bit more independence, where I think if you get closer to the hospital, you'll see a lot more people that need those higher level of care. So yeah, that it's as we call it, a regular customer. But I think nurses and doctors, they have regular customers too. And these are the people that need more care. And I see a gap. We talk about shared housing a lot, and we talk about how much, like, to even touch on fixing this homeless problem and some of this, people that are in between shelters and houses, they're just barely on the cusp of making enough money to be on their own on an apartment, but they're not, and they don't, have that, they don't have that shared opportunity with somebody else to cut their expenses to live. But I think that these doctors and nurses see these people on a consistent basis, and it's that gap that the social workers, I'm sure, are just as frustrated as the doctors and the nurses, because that job is kind of thankless too, in a way that it's very frustrating to find people the bed, or somewhere to live.
Yeah.
So,
and so that's why, of course, Shelter Registry was created by our affiliate company. And so I actually have talked with people today about Shelter Registry. And I think we're going to start seeing some grassroots traction on that platform. So that way, people in the hospitals or police and end users can start finding beds, but we need people to put their locations on there. And so really quick, I'm looking at this low demand. Can you see that, Julie?
Yep.
On the grant?
Yep.
Okay. So Julie, you were just talking about people maybe that need a higher level of care. And so you can see hospital with housing, respite care. This would be, it tells you on page 9 of this document that this is the target population. This is the bed model overview. LOS means length of stay, guys. And so that's how long they're willing to pay for people to stay at your house. Now, looking at the low demand, this would be your model. So you have to pick a model. Most people who I think we deal with want low demand.
Yeah, which would be the regular investor. I don't want to hire a whole staff. I'm not in the healthcare industry. I don't want to do all that, but I do want to give an opportunity to have veterans, get a place to stay that they can afford.
Yeah. And so they're not, I mean, they will eventually become private payers, but right now this particular grant would pay for them. And so it says the target population is veterans experiencing chronic homelessness who suffer from substance use disorders or mental health diagnosis, and who struggle with maintaining sobriety. And so in this case, you would want to just keep reading through. Low demand housing is a program designed using a low demand harm reduction model. And you go through here to make sure that this is what you want your house to be like. The length of stay is 6 to 12 months, not to exceed 24 months. And so if you welcome in a veteran who, by definition, looking at this low demand model, is essentially would be homeless, when they're leaving, but instead they're going to go into your house. Here that your memorandum of understanding is going to be this person has substance use disorders, mental health. Maybe it's something, post-traumatic stress, right? A lot of times people, it doesn't matter where they live, they're just looking for quiet. And just keeping that in mind, they're probably diagnosed with something. And I think people tend to go to the most severe of things, but that's not always the case. You might have somebody who has been clean for, 30 years off and on, and they had an episode that unfortunately, like maybe their wife died or their husband died. So anyway, I think that we have to demystify also the fact that they are still human and that you don't have to take them in. This is why the memorandum is so super important. As you say, I'll take these particular, cases. But essentially those people can only stay 6 to 12 months, not to exceed 2 years. And it'll tell you the characteristics of the house. So 20 beds or less. And then it'll say that the grantees must do certain things. So that's what I wanted to talk about today is you can pay for access to grants, which we do as a nonprofit. We have grants that hit our email box all the time, and we can pick and choose what we want to apply for. Really quick, I want to talk about divesting and the time that it takes to do this. And so, Julie, I know we try and stay on one topic, but before we wrap up today, I just want to say that it's really important for you guys to know as investors and whoever you are watching this, that if you're not getting traction or you're getting a lot of roadblocks in a particular area, that it's okay to sell your investments there and to invest in another area that's going to be more welcoming to you. Don't just stay in an area with your money and with your houses thinking that it's going to get better if the neighbors are making a problem for you, or if the code enforcement is making a problem for you, or they're not actually sending you money, whoever it is that agreed, right? You take this person and we will send you money, and then they don't send you money. That's a nonprofit or a government that you don't want to work with again. Once you guys go down this road, I just want you guys to know that if it's pad split or if it's a nonprofit or it's just your LLC, it's okay to divest and decide, I'm going to make relationships in a different pocket of the country because that particular pocket didn't embrace my help.
Well, and I think a lot of this stems from the fact that this is a huge problem and it's actually gotten out of control. And I think that with that, we're dealing with a kind of like a fatal funnel, I guess, because we have so much of this that we don't really have any way to fix some of it. And that, we have other, we have solutions to the problems. And obviously pad split is one of those for just your average divorcee, your average, right out of college, doesn't want to go back to mom and dad's, but can't get a whole place by themselves, that we're looking at now. There's code enforcement because the neighbor doesn't want 6 people next to him, and that's always been, I mean, as a police officer, that has always been the neighbor calls, and the neighbor disputes are like one of the biggest things, and it's always like neighbors are always going to be a hard thing, right? And we need to be able to, like you said, find a place that's going to fit the niche that you want to be in. But back to this grant here, like how many of these grants do they give out that you'd be able to give them, your operating agreement and what you're doing? Do you think that I mean, obviously they only have so much funding. So
well, it says right here on page 1 that the VA anticipates awarding approximately 350 grants for a total of approximately 10,500 supportive beds, guys. So we're talking about 2 beds in a room or 1 bed for every 50 square feet. That's as per the National Alliance of Recovery Residences. And so if you have a 10 by 10 room, then you could have 2 beds in there. So as it relates, I hope that answers your question very
well.
clearly.
So you're looking at bed numbers. 10,000 beds is a lot of beds. So that's something where if I write my operating agreement and I'm only offering 6 beds or less, do you think that they would bother with me that I'm not offering? I know it says no more than so many, because obviously then you're looking at a massive center or something. But what do you think for those kind of things where like these grants are great, and I think a lot of people should get those. The hardest part is filling the bed, right? And I think getting the grant and getting that ability to fill that bed with that money can make or break people. So I just don't want people to think that, oh, that I'm never going to get that.
I think that you should definitely be looking and applying for grants, taking the time to do that. That should be almost number 1 in this, pocket of investing. Is the money has to come in, and it's going to come from having a relationship with a social worker in your area. Preferably, I would say where you live would be really great, just so it's convenient for you. And then having the grants get approved. So I know that some people give out bad advice and they say, go set up a house, put furniture in it. And then, you have something to show when they ask to see, oh, well, is it a clean house? The truth is that if you have other investment properties or you have your own house, maybe you welcome that social worker and that grant analyst into your house for coffee or something. And you say, this is what I would do in another house. And so to have only 6 beds is fine. They need as many houses and beds as they can get. And this is just for VA. It's just the one.
Right. Yeah, we're just talking about one sector. I mean, there's tons of other grants and other types that we can boutique a house to. But I was just saying, like, obviously, sometimes people look at grants and they look at, how hard it is and how little is given out. But I think
well, let's talk really quick in the next 2 minutes about the numbers. So let's just say, right, you're getting $30 per day and you have,
which is nothing.
Right. Okay. I mean, you should charge more, quite frankly, because they're
higher risk.
They're higher risk.
Yeah.
And you should have
your manager alone.
What's that?
You're the management alone, and I said the management alone, and some of the other factors are, obviously part of this whole grant. And like you said, looking at the numbers and giving them the number you want for it.
Yeah. So I mean, let's put it at $50 a day, right? And you have, let's just use 30 days. So you're getting $1,500 for 1 bed.
Yep.
And how many beds can you have? You want to have just single room, or do you want to have double room occupancy? Does it cover your mortgage? Does it, the longevity, the utilities, et cetera? If you need to staff a person to come in and check on them and give, some help. So you have to charge appropriately. But I actually, we're going to close this up. We're at the 25-minute mark. I want people, to feel like they can ask us questions. So if you guys have any questions, you can always drop those below or in the chat on these lives. And go over to housesforchange.com if you guys want to take our paid course on all of this. And we're actually going to offer the courses now, each class, if you want to do them individually, like just on grants, you could do that. So that's all I have for today. Julie, anything from you in wrap up?
Nope, that's good. We'll talk next week about what you talked about before. If it's not working out, don't be afraid to do something zig or zag.
All right. Talk soon.
Yep.
Thanks,
subscribe.
bye.
Yep.